Welcome to Creative Piecemeal Podcast, a podcast for creatives. I'm your host, Tammy Takeishi. Join me for compelling conversations with artists, actors, authors, musicians, and other creatives about the impact of the creative and fine arts in their lives and our ever-changing world. Thank you for listening. Hello and welcome to Creative Piecemeal Podcast. I'm your host, Tammy. Today I am joined by graphic designer Olivia Krodel. She studied at High Point University and she's currently working as a graphic designer. And she's also done some amazing designs for myself. So if you haven't had a chance to check that out, there's a link in the show notes. But I'm so excited to have her on the show to talk about all things creative. Welcome.
Yay, thank you. Thanks for having me.
Who or what led you to the creative arts?
Well, I was always a very artsy kid. Family members always got me those big metal suitcases with all the different art supplies in them. It was always like my favorite time in school to go to art class. And I was a competitive swimmer for many years. And so that means getting up really, really early in the morning and then still getting home really early in the morning. And so in the summers, there was like nothing on TV because this was before streaming. And I started watching HGTV in the mornings. And I just fell in love with color and pattern and texture and layering it all together. And then in high school, I had a teacher, Mrs. Kuntz, shout out to her. She encouraged me to enter this contest where we designed the cover of the planners that went out to all the students. And I ended up winning that contest. And I was like, this is the coolest thing that's ever happened. And she was like, that's a job you could do. And I was shocked. So from then on, I was like, it's graphic design. That's the goal.
That's really awesome. Do you dabble in any other creative things outside of that just for fun?
Oh gosh, all the time. Yeah, I had a professor in college who very, very much, she drilled it into us that you have to spend time off screen. Like you can't just be looking at the screen all the time. You're going to get so burnt out. And I'm a bit of a hobby hopper. So I pick one up for a while, get okay at it, and then I move on to the next one. So currently I'm getting back into throwing pottery. I did that a lot in like late middle school, early high school. And I've been considering some collage, getting back into collage. Haven't done that since I was really, really little, but that can easily like become digital and turn into a design project as well.
That sounds really neat. In terms of graphic design, is there anything that, in terms of advice for graphic design, is there anything that you absolutely follow and any advice that you just throw out the window?
I think the most important thing that I learned and I always really, really stick to is that you have to keep making things for yourself, especially when, for example, I have a corporate design job. And so it's really easy when you're in an art career where what used to be fun is now your work, and it's like hard to separate those things. So I think it's really important that if you have an idea, you go ahead and just do it, even if it's silly, even if there's no purpose to it, just to be continuously keeping it fun and interesting. As a designer, I think it's kind of hard to say that there's a rule I don't follow. Once again, working corporate, you kind of have to follow the rules.
That makes sense. Like when you do things for yourself, do you ever lean towards a certain color palette or a certain style of font or anything like that? Or do you just sort of dabble with whatever?
I work really hard not to pigeonhole myself into I only do hyper feminine things or I only do minimalist things. I try to really bounce around a lot and keep it interesting, never doing the same thing twice. All that being said, though, I do really love the like 70s design, lots of earth tones, like the sunbursts, all the funky shapes. I love retro designs.
Cool. Yeah, no, retro designs are super hot right now.
Mm-hmm. Very much. The earth tones are really in too.
Yeah. You can't really go wrong with an earth tone, right?
I love brown.
Rocket. In terms of the creative process, which I don't know too much about graphic design other than it seems super amazing and very hard. But in terms of the creative process, do you have a favorite part and a least favorite part?
Yeah. Okay. There's kind of this cliche that designers are really bad at sketches. Sometimes you can find like famous designers will show you like a sketch and then the final product, and it's laughably bad. The doodles are awful. And I definitely fall into that hole. My sketches they look like a mess. And so it's really, really great when you have the sketch and you start to make the final digitally and you have this moment where you're like, this is going to work. Because sometimes the sketch is a mess and it seems like it's not going to translate, and then you start it and it does. But then on the flip side, when you have the sketch and you're excited about that sketch and then you start doing it like a final version and it's not working, that's definitely the worst. And then you have to start over.
Is it pretty common to start things over or just have like lots of drafts the way a writer would have a lot of drafts?
I always try to turn in to a client at least like 3 versions of something. I think that's kind of a standard, is to have like 3, because you don't want too many, you don't want too few. But I think it just depends on the day, on the client. If it's something I'm used to doing or something kind of new to me, there might be 50 sketches, there might be 4. It's really a shot in the dark sometimes.
What is one of your proudest moments in terms of your creative art, whether it was for a job or just for fun?
In college, I had a lot of clubs going on, and I actually didn't participate in the graphic design club because I had so many other things going on, and I was like, I'm getting enough in class, it's okay. But they had this designer coming in to speak they do like a design week every week, and they wanted some branding materials, and the president came to me and asked me to make it for them. I was like, I'm not even in this club. That is all designers, and you want me to do it? So that was a big honor. Getting my first job out of college, I did a kind of long-term assistant job for this really cool furniture company in Charlotte. They make classroom furniture out of recycled plastics. And I finally felt like I had accomplished something. I graduated in May 2020. So not ideal, a little bit of a nightmare. And it took quite a while to finally get a job that stuck. And so that was definitely a very proud moment. And it was cool that I got to do something that I felt good about too. They're putting good products into the world and recycling all that plastic.
Awesome. What are some things you like to do outside of creating art just for fun?
I read a lot. I like to thrift a lot. I'm very into clothes. I like some interior design now and again too. I'm kind of working on our living room at the moment. I think most of the things I like to do definitely have some edge of creativity to them. I'm definitely not a very analytical person.
That's cool though. In terms of reading, what are some that you've read recently?
I'm currently actually doing this challenge with a friend, and I'm going to pump out like 40 books this year. It's going to be a lot.
Oh, that's awesome.
So it's like, man, what haven't I read recently? I read a lot of like cheesy YA novels. I love like coming of age stuff. Current favorite is probably the second Aristotle and Dante book. I believe it's called Aristotle and Dante Dive into the Waters of the World. It's a really long title. But yeah, it's a gorgeous, gorgeous coming of age book. Oh, I love those so much.
Do you ever see yourself designing like book covers or anything like that?
That's the dream. That's truly the end goal. That would be totally amazing. I do actually a lot of book covers for fun of some of my favorite books. And I plan on continuing to do that for fun. And one day, maybe HarperCollins will call me.
Cool. Yeah, that would be so neat. It sounds like, a fun job for a person like yourself who loves reading and loves art, marrying that nicely.
And I actually recently found out that most book cover designers don't actually do the art. Like they commission someone else to do the art, which would probably be like my weakest point. So it's like, this is actually perfect. I would thrive at this.
Nice. So onto a serious question. Do you feel like you had any barriers to reaching where you are in your career, whether it was an external or an internal barrier?
But like I said, graduated in the pandemic, which was not ideal. I was always like star student, perfectionist. I had all these big plans. I was going to do the whole cliche thing, big city, get the cool job. That was always in the back of my mind from, gosh, probably since I was in like the 6th grade. And I felt so ready to go. And then March 2020 hit. And every single job that came up for design, it didn't matter where it was in the country, had like 500 applicants. And I just had no idea how to stand out or how to be unique among that giant group. And there were not many job postings for designers anyway. And it took me a year and a half before I got my first full-time gig, which is still where I'm currently at. I was unemployed, living at my parents' house, very sad. And then it was really hard to like keep making new things and trying to escalate my portfolio and stand out because I just wasn't in the mood for it and wasn't feeling very creative. But finally, I got a slice of hope and I got that job, and I'm kind of back to myself now.
That's good. Yeah, I can only imagine, I know a lot of creative people had a variety of struggles during the last few years. I can only imagine having to graduate into that. It must have been quite a mountain.
Yeah.
But that's wonderful that you've, come out on the other side and you've found something that you can do and you can be creative with. So
my job currently is very, very fun. I make newspaper ads. So it's a wide variety, sometimes it's a grocery store, sometimes I've done some like prom dress ones. It's all across the board. So it's very, very fun.
Awesome. So whether it's for work or for fun, where do you find inspiration for designs?
If you would have asked me this like 4 years ago, I would have had absolutely no idea. I would always hear people be like, oh, I'm so inspired by nature. And I just never understood that. Like that didn't register to me until my very good friend, who was also my boss for a hot minute, Paxton, took me to this antique store across the street from her studio. And I was like, I get it now. This is truly what being inspired is. I love, like I said, 70s like retro stuff and like going through the antique store. I mean, everything from like album covers to even cookware items with like funky patterns. That really, really scratches my brain just right.
Nice. Do you like to listen to 70s music too?
Not particularly, but my favorite artist is Andrew McMahon, and he really loves 60s and 70s. He cites the Mamas and the Papas as like his biggest inspiration. So
nice.
It's adjacent, kind of, I guess.
Of course. Yeah. So I imagine you're not one of those people that listens to music while you're creating. Are you more of a silence person?
Oh no, I do. I have to have something on. I've been doing audiobooks a lot recently. Sometimes just like throwing on TV shows and movies, but yeah, I do music too. It's a big mix. I'm a big Broadway girl. So so I have like a Broadway playlist that's just like all my favorite songs standalone. So that's a good fallback choice. And I can belt it and get some work done.
Awesome. It's going to be a good day when you've got a good playlist, right?
Oh, yeah, for sure.
So another book question. If you could be any fictional character for a day, who would you be?
I love a Jane Austen novel. I think I have to go with the obvious pick and go with Elizabeth Bennet. I think it'd be fun to be in a period drama for like a day. I don't want to live there.
Right.
But it'd be a fun experience.
Yes. That is surprisingly a very common answer on this podcast, is someone from Jane Austen or from Anne of Green Gables.
It's just so idyllic, like all the nature, especially if you're thinking like the 2005 movie, you got all the nature and so beautiful.
Yeah. Very true. And the really cool outfits,
Plus, being good at crafts is like a big pro to get married, right? They have to be good at embroidery and everything. I could be great at that.
There you go. You're a shoo-in for the 1800s.
Yes.
What is one of the biggest areas of art or graphic design in general that you're curious to learn about right now?
I have always really admired, but I've never attempted anything. Like I said, I really like retro stuff, and I like kind of pulling like older elements and kind of modernizing them a little bit. And I have never tried anything Art Nouveau, because it's very intimidating, because it's very detailed and very beautiful. But one day that's going to happen.
That would be really neat.
Yeah, I love all the intricate details, and they're usually very like florally and whimsical.
You're making me want to like start to paint or something. Maybe I should get crafty.
Yeah.
What is one of your favorite memories, or even a funny story about revolving around art in your life?
First thing that comes to me is in college, we did this project where we made GIFs, depending on who you are. And
one of those is right.
One of them is, yeah. Give you both options there. And for one of them, we had to take a video, and then we had to like draw every single clip of the video to kind of make like a stop motion style. And I had this idea that all my GIFs, we had to make a whole set, and they were all going to be like knickknacks that sit on a shelf. So they would all like go together cute. And so for the video one, I was like, I'm going to do it like a candle flickering. It was like 30 slides. I had to draw this candle like 30 times. I'm pretty sure I pulled an all-nighter for that one. And I was like, I never want to look at a candle again. Like, I have been staring at this candle for like 6 hours. Never again. I still don't own a candle, I don't think.
So when your birthday comes around, absolutely no candles on that cake.
No cake.
Oh, goodness. Yeah, that is really interesting. Sometimes we get so into a project, we lose track of time, and then it's almost like you get, no pun intended, a little burnt out on what you're doing in that moment,
Pun is intended.
Yes. It just worked so well there.
It did. It did.
Yes.
Yeah. I think that's one of the big reasons that I was very much pushed to like keep doing things off screen too, is burnout.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it's such a common thing among creative people, or people who do creative work. It's pretty easy to get burned out, or even just sort of tired of reading the same thing or looking at the same project. And then inspiration kind of gets stuck a little bit. So when you have to work through those roadblocks, what is one of your favorite things to do off screen?
Well, for starters, it is always, I think, very, very important. Even if you think a project is going really well, I think it's very important to walk away and come back, because you can get sucked into it and like convince yourself that it's great. And then you come back and look at it and you're like, this is so off balance. But I have been, let's see, what have I been doing recently that's been a little outside my box? I've been rock climbing.
Ooh, nice.
Yeah, get me in like a different headspace. I used to swim, but since then I have not been very active, and I've been trying to kind of step back into that a little bit, because I think that's a good like juxtaposition to being creative, is doing something active.
And would you say that you come back sort of with a brain full of ideas after you do something like that?
I think there's like another step that needs to be done there. I think I have to like go do something else to kind of clear the brain, and then I have to come back and like find a new inspiration or something. I'm definitely very active on Pinterest. Uh, Always got to look up new stuff and keep up with trends and everything.
Oh, Pinterest is fantastic. Yeah.
Yeah. I think it takes like that extra step, not just doing the outdoor activity.
That would make sense though, because you have to sort of clear the slate and then fill it back up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
What is a common stereotype about being an artist that you think people should sort of break free from? And do you think that maybe your work is something that could help them not believe that stereotype anymore?
I think as specifically a designer and not just an artsy person in general, there's a lot more like structure and layout to it than people realize, I think.
Mm-hmm.
It's really truly a balance of like, yeah, there's some times where I'm drawing a silly little character, but also a lot of the time I'm just making text line up well. And so I think it's very stereotypical to just assume that I'm like doodling all day or something like that. But it's a lot more logical than most people think it is.
True. Yeah, because you have to get the angles just right and the sizes and the shapes of everything sort of exactly perfect.
Yeah. And especially when you're working with like a paragraph of text, that has to all be balanced, overall visual balance, all that jazz.
Do you have any advice for young people going into graphic design? Like anything that you wish they should know?
I think if you're not interested in college, but still interested in graphic design, you need to take some kind of class. I think it's very, very valuable to get feedback from the people around you, and always be making things as if it's the most important project you've ever made in your life. Never like halfway do anything, because sometimes you might think this idea isn't that great, and then you make it and it ends up being the best thing you've ever made. So I really think you need to like fully commit and always be making things outside of, if you are in college or taking that class, outside of class as well.
That's a fantastic advice, definitely. You could bring any creative person back from the grave, who would it be?
I immediately know. It is Cezanne. He is my favorite painter. I love when an artist like takes two things that like aren't supposed to go together and kind of makes them go together. And he really was on that line between abstract and realism. And obviously like started Impressionism essentially. He was one of the front runners, and I would just love to pick his brain.
That would be really cool. If you were stranded on a desert island, and you could only bring one music album, one book, and one type of food, what would it be?
Well, I live in Pittsburgh now, so I feel like my food answer has to be pierogies.
Nice.
Delicious, filling, simple. I feel like that'd be good for an island. Book-wise, I think I'm gonna roll back to the Jane Austen. Take the complete works with me. That's one book technically.
There you go.
Music, I feel like it's everyone's favorite, but Rumors, Fleetwood Mac is just set the standard. So good. I could never.
Wow. You are a true retro lady. That is a classic. Excellent. So one final question. This one's a little more of a Hallmark question, but in your own words, what does it mean to live a creative life?
I think living a creative life means that you're not attempting to follow any kind of script, whether you're entering a new project, trying to solve a new problem. You're taking the time to come up with a unique solution and maybe trying to think in a way that the average person isn't thinking.
Well, Olivia, thank you so much for joining the podcast. Listeners, please check the show notes for links to her website if you're looking for some awesome whimsical designs and need a graphic designer. As always, thanks for listening. Thanks for listening to the podcast. Like the show? Have a question? Stop by the Facebook and Instagram pages. Links are in the show notes, or search for Creative Piecemeal Podcast on social media and click follow for all the latest.